Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world, and people who are here live, and also people in the future who might be watching videos either at LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube. Just before we get going, just if you can think about some questions that you might have for Bill and I today. The subject is the idea litmus test separating gold from glitter. And the idea is to talk about how do we know whether an idea is any good or not. So if you find this session useful, then click the like button, make sure you subscribe and get notifications as to when things are going live. This particular session happens at the same time every Wednesday, so hopefully you're in a routine of coming to see us on the live show. So without any further ado, I'll introduce you to Bill. So hello, Bill. Nice to see you today.
Oh, nice to see you, Chris.
So yeah, do you have any kind of initial thoughts about the idea of validating ideas being a bit like a litmus test?
Yeah, the biggest one always for me is start with a problem instead of a solution. The worst drudgery you can ever have in life is trying to push a solution towards a problem that may not exist. So fall in love with problems, and then the solutions will write themselves.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I was one thing I forgot to say is actually in preparation for this session today, I asked ChatGPT what were the top 10 things that people ask about for pre-launch startups, and the top one was idea validation. So this is obviously something that lots of people are concerned about. What one extra thing that I think is important when thinking about ideas, I think when you're in a kind of entrepreneurial mindset, you find yourself in situations where something's happening around you. Maybe you're at an event or you're out, in public somewhere, and something happens, and you think that would make a really good idea for something, but often the ideas we have aren't necessarily for us. It's like we haven't got the experience or the expertise or the contacts to actually make anything of that idea, although it might well be a good idea. I mean, what would you do if you're somebody that has ideas all the time? What would you do with the ideas that aren't for you, if you like? Would you,
Well, I mean, I've got a folder somewhere in my computer that has a lot of these, but if you're really passionate about it, and you can connect it reasonably closely, that's the time to to find what we would call a co-founder. Hey, I know this is a good idea because I've seen it in action. I see the problem, and I see people trying to solve it, but I lack whatever this is. I don't know how to make an app. I don't know how to do something that's absolutely key to making it successful. And so that's where you go out and you find somebody in your community. And that's where great partnerships begin. I mean, that's Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. Steve Jobs was the idea guy and the marketing guy, but he couldn't put together a circuit board the way Wozniak could. So without each other, nothing ever happened. But with each other, the pie became so much bigger, and to this day.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, before I go any further, if anybody's got any questions in the audience, then please do write them in the comments on whichever platform you're on, and also in the comments you'll notice there's a link. If you feel brave enough to come and join us in the studio, then you can click that link, and we'll let you in to ask your question. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I found out the other day that apparently Jeff Bezos did a degree in physics, which is quite interesting, isn't it? It just shows you that what you study at university isn't necessarily what you end up doing. So
yeah, but physics can make you a very big thinker, though, because the universe is a big place, and I think physicists probably get in the habit of not discounting ideas, because just about anything is possible. Even the whole concept of quantum physics is that anything can happen anytime. Maybe that helps them. In my experience, engineers make great entrepreneurs. And you think, well, engineers, they just build stuff, right? Well, yeah, but you take an engineer and you put them together with a business person, and you've got a very powerful duo. So
Yes.
and it doesn't matter. If you look at entrepreneurs and what they did in school, it may not match much of what they ended up doing. So I think there's a big place for serendipity there, and it's the people that recognize the problem in the world.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
No, I don't know if I've mentioned it before, but when I was at school, deciding what to do for, university, I got taken to an open day at Cambridge University, to their engineering department, and it was like to see what kind of problems they were working on. And it's exactly like you were saying. It's like, well, there were three problems that I remember. One of them was, how do you get the flavor on both sides of a potato crisp or chip, as you call them in the States? And apparently that was a really big problem. That people who make chips or crisps, would get complaints from people who said your bag of chips doesn't taste of anything. So.
Oh my gosh.
So that was, so it just shows you that engineering can actually get you into thinking about different problems.
Yeah, and any time anyone who aspires to be an entrepreneur, find places, classes, environments that help you ask how could we, or help you be observant. The example I use with people all the time when I'm trying to explain this in groups is that I go to the grocery store at 5 o'clock or 5:30 in the evening, and I see women and even men there, professionally dressed. They're obviously executives at companies. They're professional people, successful people, and they're frantically going through the frozen food area or to the prepared meal area, trying to find something for dinner. And I know a little bit about this because my wife was in that same situation about 20 years ago. So I know enough about it to kind of see what's happening as I see it happening. And these people they highly value bringing a hot meal home and putting it on the table for their family, and they feel like they're less of a parent, or that they're cutting their family short if they don't. So, but then there's this panic every day, and it goes on each day, or at least a couple times a week. And then they get there, they bring this hot meal home, just to find out two of the kids aren't even there because they went to somebody else's house, or they had their soccer practice ran later, or whatever. And so, I always see that situation as that there's a solution there. It's just waiting for someone to grab it and go for it. And so I use that as an example because it's something a lot of people can identify with. But it's looking at the world and seeing it for problems, not just seeing it,
Yeah, I remember the first idea that I can remember having in a kind of entrepreneurial sense was when I first went to the States back in the 80s. I was on a school exchange.
Oh wow!
About American cash, the money, like a dollar bill or a $5 bill or whatever, it all looks pretty similar.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same colors, the same texture, and whatever. So
same
I was
size.
thinking, well, if you're blind, how on earth do you tell the difference between the banknotes?
You don't.
And so I was thinking. So the idea that struck me was, why don't the mint in America, put Braille in the corner of the banknotes?
Mm-hmm.
And I've always thought that would be a decent idea. I mean, in the UK, what we do is that the banknotes are different sizes. So it may well be that in the States now, a dollar bill is a different size from a $5 bill.
All the same. Yeah, actually, the other day I saw a device that it had 1, 2, 5, 10, 20, 50, 100, and it was a Braille. You put it in the corner of the bill and you push it down. It would actually put Braille. It put a Braille number.
So people are actually doing that. That's interesting.
And that was an analog device. That was just, there was no electronics to that. That was just, it was just a thing. But then they also had something that you could put on the edge of the note, and it had an electric eye in it. It would read it. It would say 5, 10, 50. So it's funny you bring that up because that's exactly, I just saw it the other day. I thought it was very clever.
So somebody's got the same idea. That's interesting. Yeah. Okay. Well, I've got Simon's asked a question, so I'm going to bring this on. So Simon's loving the litmus test concept. So he's taking it a bit further. He's saying, he's talking about pH here in terms of the scale, in terms of acidic and alkaline. And yeah, I guess the thing about an idea being acidic or alkaline, both of those are corrosive. So it's kind of, how do you get the happy medium, I suppose, for an idea?
Yeah, and the right pH in an environment is dependent on the environment. Some environments require a slightly acidic environment. Some require an alkaline one. So it's understanding your customer, the problem, and all of the contexts around it. This is basic design theory, but really getting in with your customer and understanding the problem and their experience with it, maybe even better than they do, because they understand it emotionally and sort of in the hindbrain sort of thing. You need to understand in the front brain, hey, they're feeling this way because. And once you understand that, then you say, well, if that's true, then knowing what we know about the customer, this is the right pH for a solution. And then you just have to figure out what are your design constraints and what are your design criteria around that.
That's interesting. No, I mean, Simon's question makes me think about soil. So, for example, if it's a sandy soil, that's more acidic. So different kinds of plants will grow in that particular soil. And I guess alkaline, I don't know whether clay is alkaline or. But anyway, you get different sorts of flora growing on those things. So the plants in that analogy are like your customers, aren't they? So you've got different people that thrive with a particular idea according to its pH, I suppose.
Yeah, and then you have like the extremophile plants and animals in the world that will only thrive on the extreme. It has to be, 1,000. The thermal vents has to be 1,000 degrees and very acidic, or the opposite, it has to be very cold and very, very alkaline. So
yeah, that's interesting. So I guess that if you're extending the analogy, those would be really, really niche markets that are very expensive, because that so I don't know.
But there's still opportunities. I mean, the fact that they're there means that there's an opportunity, and it's the same. You may only have 100 customers on Earth for the thing that you want to build, but they may be willing to spend $1 million each to get it.
Well, maybe like a rocket to launch a satellite into space or something like that.
Yeah, not a lot of customers there, but very necessary.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Simon. Anybody else who wants to ask a question, please do feel free to do that, and I shall hide that again. Yeah, I mean, if we're doing this litmus test, how would you go about separating the gold from the glitter, Bill?
Well, yeah, it starts, as I mentioned before, with understand your customer really well, and starting with a problem. A solution looking for a problem is that's starting out with the glitter and hoping that it turns into gold. It's almost alchemy. Hey, I've got all this lead here. If I try really, really hard, I bet I can turn it into gold somehow. Well, nobody ever did. At least nobody ever proved that they did. A number of alchemists in the Middle Ages claimed that they turned into
that's
lead
what
into gold.
Isaac Newton spent most of his career trying to turn lead into gold. So
that's right. He was a famous alchemist, wasn't he? But he also did so many real things. He did real science. As well. So he was pretty diverse when it came to that. But shortening that path to understanding if you've got gold or glitter is the most important thing, because the worst thing you can do is extend a bad idea, because that time equals money typically, whether it's actual cash or just your life, the shortness of your life. Shortening that up so that you can either build it or stop it is the most important thing, so that if you do decide to stop it, it's relatively quickly, and then you can survive to the next idea, which might be the gold one. But don't keep trying to beat the dead horse. They keep thinking of a product like a Segway. I mean, they still exist. They still sell a few Segways, but it came out as a solution to a problem that was not well understood. The original founders of the Segway company said, hey, this is how people are going to move around in the future. Everyone's going to be on a Segway. It's going to be like the Jetsons, except flying cars, it's going to be Segways. And that just didn't turn out to be the case. So they still have a small company. They still sell some, but it never turned out to be the thing that they thought. And Was it something they should have abandoned? I don't know. I mean, they probably made a thing out of it, but the market that they assumed that they would have is much smaller than the future that they envisioned without really understanding their customer.
Yeah, I've just been to, I've just watched a webinar in the last couple of days about elevator pitches.
Hmm.
And it's quite interesting because he was talking about an elevator pitch only being like 4 or 5 words, really short, and you never show it anybody in his world, which was all about writing books to kind of extend it beyond commercial star size. But I think it's relevant to any kind of business really, or including creatives or charities or whatever. So for example, the elevator pitch that he said for the Harry Potter series was orphan goes to wizarding school.
Yeah.
And that's the pitch, because wizarding school is kind of interesting in its own way, but the fact that he's an orphan is interesting because he kind of grows up in this normal household, and so it's a complete surprise and shock to him when he gets to Hogwarts.
Well, it is. It's very provocative. Your mind. Why is he an orphan? How does he get to go to wizarding school? What is wizarding school? What is that? Right. It really does. Your mind takes off with that. I love that. I mean, that's tremendous.
And the beauty of the aim of any kind of pitch is for the person that you're talking to say, "Wow, that sounds interesting. Tell me more."
Yeah.
Another so that you can go into the kind of exposition then.
Yeah, another discipline for those really short elevator pitches, like you said, is the analogy thing. It's Uber for the elderly, or it's Uber for school children, or it's Amazon for engineers, or whatever it is. It's something where it's something that has a well-established history of being successful, but how do we take that concept and bring it to someone who you don't typically connect it with? And that's kind of a quick and dirty way to do something like that. That again is still very provocative. So really, how does that work? I can't imagine Amazon for I can't how do you make something like that work? And that's a great way to do a pitch as well, I think.
But what he was saying in this talk was that the pitch, although you never share it directly, it suffuses everything else. So, for example, in a book, it informs the cover, the text that you write, the blurb, the design, the marketing, and I think it probably goes for other types of business as well. Not just creative businesses. For example, if you're launching a charity or an NGO or a social enterprise, I think the pitch is very important because you've got to identify exactly who you're trying to help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm thinking for my idea about the getting dinner on the table. It's like something around the family gathers around a hot meal. Mom and dad and family gather around a hot meal. Something like that, where or successfully gather around a hot meal, or something like that. So yeah, it is, because then it guides you. It becomes your vision. It's that there's vision, mission, and then values. And people often screw up the mission and the vision, but the vision is that sort of asymptotic thing that we want to achieve that may not ever be possible, but we're going to die trying to get there. And then the mission is what you do each day to get a little bit closer, and then the values are how you go about that mission. So, but that vision should be very short. I've coached people through sort of that vision thing, and oftentimes it gets very long because they want to get everything in there, or if you give it to a committee at a big company, the committee, all the committee does is make it longer. But can we get it down like you had? Can we get it down to 5 words or less? Nike, just do it.
Yes.
That powers everything Nike does. Hey, we just do it. So how can that then can focus you like a lightning bolt on what it is that you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, and I think in your example of the meal, the family around the table, Bill, I mean, if you were a charity, then it might be, if you were helping a particular group of people, you might say, okay, well, how about homeless kids on the street and getting them a meal in a kind of family situation. So you're giving it a bit of context as well.
Yeah, it's Meals on Wheels for the homeless.
Yeah.
So how something like that, Meals on Wheels in the States here is it's meals that are delivered to elderly people that are shut in, so that they ensure that they get a healthy meal every day. And well, what if we could do that for homeless people? That's the kind of thing again that would really drive that organization. Hey, this is what we're trying to achieve. Everything we do then kind of points in that direction.
Or even if it was, if you niched it even further, you could say that the service was for making sure that on special occasions like Christmas or Thanksgiving or various religious holidays, let's say, that people who observe those festivals, if you like, who were housebound, could have access to a decent meal. So it's amazing how you can extend these things out quite quickly if you've got the basic premise.
Yeah, in that nonprofit space, or charitable space is fascinating too, because the problems are, again, you're addressing problems just the same. Your business model will be different because you may rely on donations or some other types of streams of revenue that aren't directly coming from the people that you're benefiting, but also fascinating design problems, because sometimes your customer can be hard to reach. If they're homebound or if they're homeless and transient, they're hard to locate. You don't know how many people there are at a given time. How do you adjust to those issues? So then the design constraints and the design, how you go about designing it, becomes very challenging for those reasons.
Yeah, I mean, going back to what we were saying a little bit before, it's maybe, I mean, clearly sometimes ideas can come to you out of the blue and then you research them.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, you can go out with the mindset of being receptive to ideas as they appear to you in the settings that you're in. So you can actually seek out, if you have a particular interest in a particular hobby, or you go to a meetup group that's of interest to you, then ideas can hit you, can't they? From those situations that you're in, and then you can think, well, okay, well that's a problem that somebody has identified in the group that I'm in, or the meeting I'm in, or whatever. And then you can go away and do the research then, because the idea actually presents itself rather than you having the idea in the first place.
Absolutely. And I did this with a team once, because I was trying to introduce design to them, and I sent them out for a day once in pairs. And I said, go out, go to the mall, go to the grocery stores, go walk down Main Street, and document every problem that you see around you. And it was, they started out kind of, they were kind of frustrated to start because they weren't just, they were looking too hard. You actually have to become very passive, and you have to, it's like using the force, right? You have to let it flow through you, let the world flow through you, and just listen to things. Listen to people's conversations as you walk by. What are they talking about? What's the tone of their voice? What do you notice about the sidewalk? What do you notice about the park or the businesses? By afternoon, they really got it, because we met for lunch. We had a conversation. They talked about some of their frustration, but a couple of people had some success. Well, I saw this and I noticed this, and that got people thinking, and it got them to stop overthinking and just kind of open up, just become your five senses, let everything flow into that instead of trying to push something out to the world. And so a great exercise for anybody watching today. Just go out and try that, see what happens. Or even go to a particular place where you think there's a problem, and then just really practice being open to it, because the problem that might be there might not be exactly the way you think it is, or there may be something totally different that's there as well, that might be even a better problem to try to solve.
Well, do you think running with that idea, Bill, do you think there's merit in 12 Ronnie's perhaps inviting people who want to have ideas. So even before they've had an idea, but they've got this vague idea that they'd like to consider being an entrepreneur.
Absolutely.
To come to some kind of event, which is like a hackathon for coming up with some kind of with an idea that you then go away with to do some more research. And that's even before you've had an idea and you're thinking of launching a particular type of business, you know.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a twist on a design sprint where you come in with a kind of an idea, but then you spend 3, 4, 5 days getting to a seeing if you can come up with a low fidelity solution that actually impacts your customer. But in this case here, it might be a little bit shorter time period, but it might be you've got some candidates for sort of pre-ideas, and then you're working with other people to understand spaces that you may not understand. And the idea is you get that to an idea, and then it's or you get it down to a set of ideas, and then you decide which ones that you want to research, you want to take the next step on. That'd be fun.
I'm teaching people the mindset and the processes that they need to develop in terms of noticing when an idea presents itself or an opportunity that they might then realize is a gap in the market, because quite often the gap's always there, it's just that nobody notices that.
It's a mindset though. Something it reminds me of, I used to take in my sales organization, used to take the sales managers out, and we would go out and recruit out into the community, and that just kind of blew their minds. Well, recruiting lets you put an ad in the paper, right? Or you put it on monster.com, right? And people apply for your job. No, those aren't the people we're looking for. We're looking for people that already have good jobs but have the skills that we need out in the community. So we would go out and we'd look for people with good customer service skills and these sort of things, and we'd say, hey, would you be willing to come and talk to us about an opportunity? And they were always very flattered, and it was a very productive type of event. But it became us again being just listening and learning and watching. Hey, that's the kind of person I'm looking for. Hey, that's a problem in the community right there. Look at that. And there's another one over there. It's very freeing, and it's certainly an interesting type of lifestyle. It can be exhausting because you have to be very, very intentional about how you're going about things. You have to just kind of turn off your brain and just turn on the part that just listens and sees and thinks and tastes and feels.
Yeah, I mean, it strikes me that a useful exercise might be a concept that a kind of educational, philosopher called Edward de Bono, who I think I've mentioned before. He came up with this concept of PO, P-O. And what that means is it's kind of like a kind of what if. It means what if, or it's like it sits in between yes and no. And one exercise that he did, which was absolutely brilliant and would work really well in a kind of workshop-y type setting, is that you take some disparate nouns, you just pick them at random out of a dictionary. So I don't know, carrot, an astronaut, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to come up with in 10 minutes, let's say, you have to come up with as many types of connections between these two disparate things that got nothing in common, apparently, and then nothing gets discarded. And the idea is that carrot, po, astronaut means what connections between carrots and astronauts, what would they be?
And that's a great way to open up your mind.
Yeah. And what you do is you pick say 20 words and you put them in a hat, and then people just pick them out at random. So there's no preconceived bias. Any last words, Bill? I think we're coming towards the end of our session today.
Yeah, again, the difference between gold and glitter is understanding your customer and the problem better than they understand themselves.
Yeah, and I guess also thinking about gold and glitter. I mean, the proverb says that all that glitters is not gold. So, you have to think about fool's gold and make sure you're not going down a rabbit hole, which isn't going to be productive or profitable.
The pH might not be right.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Bill. I think we're we'll close off today's session. Thank you so much for coming. Very interesting conversation about ideas. If you have any extra questions that you'd like to ask us in the comments, we will answer those after the session. Please do remember to like the videos either now if you're live in the audience, or later on if you're watching this as a video, and also make sure to click on the bell so that you get notified about all our future events. So as I say, thanks for coming, and see you again next time.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.